when we talk about Atlantis,
Mm-hmm.
right? And people are like, oh, there's this like ancient civilization that was so advanced, and like they created the pyramids, and like where we found like in Africa where they think where Atlantis
Yeah, yeah,
was,
yeah.
right? They couldn't have been that advanced. They're not here. Unless they're the ones that are like crafting the UAPs. If it turns out that Atlantis is managing the UAPs, okay, then you survived it. You guys are the top of the food chain, right?
Sure.
But I think that where we are right now is the best civilization has ever been. Because a lot of people are like, oh man, you don't even know the ancients, bro. They had some crazy tech and they had like knowledge. I'm like, but they're not here. We're here. So how can you say that?
Right.
You know, are they going to space? Do they have, unless we find out that like we go to, the moon and you find out that there are bases on the moon built by Atlanteans. They're like, oh damn, that's crazy.
Right.
Or like you go to Mars and you're like, oh, there's like an Atlantean race from Mars. Have you heard this? Did I tell you about this? Like the theory of like, they think that the Martians, there was like life on Mars and they transported life here because their planet was dying.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Potentially viable. Like Avi Loeb said, if we go into the caves and we see cave paintings, like we'll know for sure that there were, humans on Mars. Like theory, okay, maybe. But going back to it, it's like, if the ancients were so great, if they knew everything, if their tech was so amazing, if you love them so much, bro, why are they here?
True.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nothing lived on past them. We
Mhm.
don't know how the pyramids were built. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah,
basically,
yeah.
it's like everyone's talking about like this lost ancient technology, sound waves, vibrations. That's how they're powering things. They're able to cut through limestone through vibration. Maybe, sure, totally cool. That would be a whole new way to make things.
But it's
If
all
we find out,
sensational, though.
you're right, right, and it goes back to what we were saying in the beginning of the
Yeah.
podcast. It's like if you just look at it logically with the evidence, we seem to be the top dogs.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe there was a race of Atlanteans that had like the craziest stuff. Like if they had hover cars, bro, like why didn't you
Yeah.
hover over the dying world, bro?
Yeah, yeah,
Why
yeah.
didn't you make a hover base? Like what are we talking about here? Or
Mhm.
maybe that's what those UAPs are. Maybe they're like hover bases. We won't know until we know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right?
Sure. Yeah,
Because
yeah.
they literally UAPs could be everything, anything. But if we just look at it logically, if you really had the craziest tech in the world, would you not have survived till now?
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe I'm looking at this whole rock. Maybe it's like we are the descendants of the Atlanteans. Like plot twist. We are the Atlanteans. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. Maybe I'm looking at it wrong. But from my point of view, it's like if you were so advanced, why did you not survive?
That culture.
What?
Culture or the people?
Both. Tech,
Yeah,
culture,
yeah, yeah.
people,
Exactly.
your race.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
why unless somebody's like, actually, the Sumerians are the descendants of, because the Sumerians are the oldest race. So they're like, oh, the Sumerians are the descendants of Atlanteans. They'd be like, oh, okay, cool. Now we know there's a causal chain, like there's a link we can trace. But nobody's saying that.
No.
So like their tech couldn't have been that good.
Mm-hmm.
Is my point,
Right.
Like
Yeah,
we
yeah, yeah.
really try it. Like I'm watching these YouTube videos of like they were able to like hover limestone bricks through their
Okay.
minds, and you're like, bro, if you could do that, like you could have made crazier stuff than this. We could have had a floating city.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Maybe they like people were like, oh, but the symmetry of like the way that this the what do you call it, the Sphinx, the face on the Sphinx,
Mm-hmm.
the human face. So they're like, uh it's so perfectly identical. Like when you're cutting out a face and you want to make the left side equal to the right side, it's near impossible if you're doing it by hand. But
Okay.
the symmetry is so perfect that you can literally flip in Photoshop the left side and the right side, and they're identical.
Mm-hmm.
That means whoever created that had like some genius architecture ability that they're able to make like a perfectly symmetrical vase. Okay. I'm like, yeah, it's cool tech. That's it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like, yeah, we don't know how to do that, but do you know how to make cell phones? You know what I mean? It's like, what are we arguing for here?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because like a lot of people will um, will like there's this post of like the globe in Vegas right now where it's like it's
Mm-hmm.
like a 3D sphere and like looks at the planes as they're coming in. You know
Sure.
that thing?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
then I saw this one meme and I posted it again where it's like you have the pyramids, but they're like, we don't know how to make this, but we can make this. So it's like we don't know how to make pyramids, but we can make like this Vegas thing. We've like lost our ingenuity. And I was like, bro, that's equivalent, bro. Like tell them to make that. There's no way they know how to make that.
Mm-hmm.
Just like we don't know how to make the pyramids. It's just lost tech.
Mm-hmm.
Like it wasn't important for us enough economically to figure that out.
Sure. Yeah.
But for them it was important.
Mm-hmm.
So like that's why they figured out how to make these limestone things. You know?
Yeah.
Does that make
Yeah, yeah,
sense?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because too many people love this like ancient stuff, and I'm just kind of like, I don't know. Actually, Joe Rogan said that he's like, if you look at the Eiffel Tower, though, it's like, oh no, 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 it wasn't Joe Rogan, it was Neil deGrasse Tyson, because Joe Rogan's like, yeah, but the pyramids, blah blah blah, and then Neil was like, yeah, but look at the Eiffel Tower, and Joe was like, no, but it's nothing compared to, but I'm like, yeah, but the Eiffel Tower is equally as impressive. Like, we just don't know how they made the pyramids. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you're like making it more grand than it is. Like what we don't know is amazing,
Yes. Yeah.
right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that all being said, is are we just afraid of our own mortality? That's why we keep thinking about like these things that these ancient civilizations and like, oh, the end of the world. It's like when you look at the through line of the whole conversation, it's just like, oh, you're just afraid of dying, right?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, as a subculture part of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, why do we care so much? But you're living, bro.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, just live. Like that's
Uh,
the
uh,
coolest part about this whole
yeah,
thing.
yeah, 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 yeah. We it's something about we get used to our life and we think that it's just normal.
And it's boring.
Right.
You're like,
But the thing is, we're living our best lives this
yeah,
time.
yeah. But we're always like, no, the ancients knew, bro. They had something else. I think that they knew something, but I think that's like called spirituality, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like, but that was their science at the time. They
Sure.
don't have our science now, where you like empirical studies, we're like able to like, what do you call that? Peer reviewed,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like, I think the next iteration of this, or like the next step, and what we're starting to see now is like a merger between science and spirituality. But what I mean by that is like looking at what they thought and then vetting it with our tools. And
Yes.
then that would be like, now we'll know what's real, bro. Because there is some stuff that they knew, but we just like haven't looked into it,
Yeah.
like meditation and like,
No,
I
that's
don't
so
know.
funny that you bring
You
this
know
up
what I'm saying?
because I watched the whole debate between two doctors. Dr. K,
Oh,
remember
okay.
that guy?
Oh, yeah.
And
The
some
video
other
game.
guy named yeah, 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 and Dr. Mike, and they were talking about Ayurvedic medicine.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So this
Yeah.
is like ancient things, but there's a lot of it's explaining two different science in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, what we have now is as a population, we get the collection of information, and then we go to the individual, right? What
Okay.
works on the individual because it's different. Not
Yeah.
always the whatever the population is not necessarily works on the individual.
You're talking about like healing people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
While the concept of Ayurveda is like focusing on the individual first and then expanding from that, like focusing on people.
Yeah. Yeah. No, no. I know what you mean. Yeah. Yeah. That's really
But then,
interesting.
yeah,
Yeah. Go
because
ahead.
the argument was he's not saying that all Ayurvedic medicine is good or anything. There's probably a lot of stuff that they didn't understand back in those times
Totally.
that they
Yeah.
added
Yeah.
in there. So we have our tools today to understand what can work from then,
Exactly.
as you were
Yeah.
mentioning, right? Using
Yeah.
today's tools to understand the uh, what they understood back then.
Totally. Science and spirituality. You're like, it's just vetting what we like. Spirituality is like, honestly, it's just like, it is the science of the time. Like, people are like, oh, spirituality. It's like, no, that's just their best guess, bro. They didn't have like microscopes or anything like
Right.
that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like, the reason why they would chant is because like we call it the placebo effect, right?
Mhm.
The placebo effect works,
Yeah.
but they call it chanting
Mhm.
and like prayer,
Mhm.
right? Same thing, same but different. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
same mechanism of action. No, same result, different mechanism of action,
Mhm.
or like different explanation of it.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like this prayer is actually placebo, and then people are like, placebo's not real. It's like, then why did it work?
Yeah, yeah,
You know
exactly.
what I mean?
Yeah.
So so that's interesting that they're having that conversation, and I think the people at the forefront, and this is what really fascinated me with like Tara becoming naturopathic doctors, like that to me is like you're onto something
Mhm.
because they understand that. So like when people hear like, oh, naturopathic doctor, like the general assumption is like, oh, they'll never touch medicine. But no, they're like, they know what markers there are. It's like, you cannot come back from this. Like
Right.
that's why Tara's so like adamant about me staying healthy. Cause it's like, there's a point where you're going to have to go on medicine.
Mhm.
Like we can only do so much intervention, but medicine is necessary. And that's like the step. Then you go see a doctor. It's like, man, I need some chemicals, bro.
Right.
But they're trying to like, it's the Ayurvedic approach, which is like focus on the person, like the root cause, and then we'll like go from there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Whereas like general medicine now is like science first, you know, like even with my sleep apnea, right?
Mhm.
High blood pressure. Okay, we'll give you some pills. Well, actually, nobody said that they would ever give me pills, but um, Tara's like, you're on a trend towards having to get pills,
Mhm. Yeah,
like
yeah,
for
yeah.
high blood
Yeah, yeah, I
pressure,
understand. Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
then because I went to the doctor, they're like, we'd never give you pills for this. And then Tara's like, yet. But as you get older, your body's gonna get weaker, so it won't be able to bounce back, and then you're gonna go into a zone, right?
Mhm.
And then it turns out, oh, sleep apnea. So it's like that was kind of the sign because every time I went to like the doctors and like, hey, I think it's sleep apnea. They're like, no, there's no causal link, blah blah blah. But then for her, they're seeing studies that are like there is a causal link, and it turned out it was correct, right?
Right.
So it's like that's the merging of science and spirituality. They're like, you need to breathe more while you're like it make no
Mhm, mhm,
sense, you
mhm.
know? It's like, oh, it's just air. You just can't breathe when you're sleeping. Like
Right.
you would say that as like a there's no way it can be that simple kind of
Mhm.
thing. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But then it is that simple, and you're like, that's what I mean. It's like science spirituality. It's like the spirituality of like it can be simple,
Mhm.
but we need to like vet it, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Exactly.
And I really think that it's going to progress and progress and progress and like
Mhm.
your we're gonna see a future of that, you know? Like a merger between the two. Because even in like the naturopathic doctor field, like there are a lot of medical doctors who are like she went to school with medical doctors. Like they already had medical degrees, but they went back to like get this aspect of it because they're like, oh, it actually help benefit my practice if I have both sides.
Right. Yeah, their
You
focus
know?
is on patients, right? That means they care for their patients.
Oh, you mean naturopathic doctors?
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
I'm
Like,
saying those doctors that went there to learn that too,
oh yeah,
because
yeah,
they
yeah,
want to actually
totally.
help their patients. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because they're like, oh, there's like research in the zone. We're not studying this in like the
Mhm.
traditional medical sense, so I'm gonna go here and
Yeah.
like study it. Yeah. And I think that's gonna be the future. I think that a lot of people are going to like a lot of future doctors are gonna like take that approach. Because even like my parents' medical doctor, like, but it's funny though, because it's always the Asian ones, right? So like, I know Tara's family's family doctor, my family's family doctor, they're both Asian,
Mhm.
right? And they're every time you hear them, like, oh yeah, we always don't we try not to prescribe medicine right away. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, probably because you're Asian, bro. Like you know that there's an Eastern side to this where it's like
That's
maybe you just need
yeah,
to
yeah,
clean
yeah,
up
exactly.
you
Yeah,
know what I
that
mean?
background. Yeah,
Whereas
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. Whereas my the reason why they stopped going to my original family doctor is because they were just prescribing medicine all the time.
Mhm.
It's like, oh, you have this little thing, yeah, medicine. Oh, this medicine. And my mom's a nurse, so she's like, there's a lot of side effects with that.
Mhm. Yeah.
So then they found this other one, which is like, let's try intervention, and then if
Right.
that's not working, it's like the future, you
Then you
know?
go in that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Exactly.
Right? Yeah.